You can feel it the second it happens. That suffocating, dead silence that washes over an arena when a collection of superstars looks completely ordinary. For 3 painful minutes, Team USA's offense was dead in the water against Italy. 5 points in 3 minutes. 5. These are supposedly the greatest women's basketball players on the planet, and they're getting locked down by a defense they should be obliterating. The scoreboard told the whole story, 5-5. And everyone watching was thinking the exact same thing. How much longer is this coaching staff going to keep running this broken starting lineup into the ground?
Let's get this going. Let me just... Oh! Misdirection. Backdoor. Take it to the rack. Layup! Folks, look at the score, actually. 5-5. We only scored 5 points in the first 3 minutes of this game. Caitlin...
Here's what the basketball establishment doesn't want you to understand. They've been selling us this narrative that experience trumps everything. That slow, methodical, half-court basketball is the safe way to handle international competition. That Caitlin Clark needs to wait her turn behind the veterans who have paid their dues. But against Italy, that entire narrative got exposed as complete nonsense. Chelsea Gray, who's a phenomenal floor general in her own right, was running an offense that looked like it was stuck in quicksand. Too slow, too predictable, completely lacking the explosive unpredictability needed to crack open that Italian defense. The game was turning into exactly the kind of ugly, grinding slugfest that gets teams upset on the international stage.
But, oh, go behind the back here. Oh, in between the legs. Oh, let me stop, hold on. Turn around. Fade away. In your face.
Then something beautiful happened. Assistant coach Nate Tibbetts, filling in while the head coach was handling college duties, looked at that stagnant offense and did what any rational basketball mind would do. He said, forget the politics, forget the egos, forget the hierarchy. 3 minutes into the first quarter, he called number 22 off the bench. And what happened next wasn't just a momentum shift, it was a complete and total hostile takeover of a basketball game. When Caitlin Clark stepped onto that court, Team USA had managed a pathetic 5 points. Over the next 6.5 minutes with Clark running the show, they erupted for 23 points. Let me repeat that because this statistical explosion needs to sink in. 5 points in 3 minutes without her. 23 points in 6.5 minutes with her.
He said some nice, up, yup, free up some space. Step back, signature Caitlin Clark 3 with the step back going left. Angel Reese actually excited about it, if you can believe it. If you can believe it, look at all that space. Pull up, bang, to end the quarter.
The transformation was absolutely violent. The second Clark touched the ball, the entire geometry of the court stretched to its breaking point. Those Italian defenders who had been comfortably packing the paint suddenly found themselves in a state of complete panic. They had to extend their pressure all the way out to the logo, terrified of Clark's unlimited range. And the instant they extended that pressure, the Team USA offense became an unstoppable machine. Watch this possession and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Clark has the ball and every single Italian defender is locked onto her every movement. They're expecting the deep three, they're anticipating the pick and roll, but Clark uses brilliant misdirection. She manipulates the defense with her eyes, creates a microscopic window along the baseline, and delivers a pass that completely bypasses the defensive rotation for an effortless layup. This isn't just finding the open player. This is actively manipulating elite defenders into surrendering the easiest shot in basketball.
There she is. Gives Caitlin Clark the ball. Caitlin Clark pushing it. Paige already up the... Oh, look at the threading the needle. Sweet! Oh, in between 2 defenders. Pass was so good that defender almost fell over. Look at that. Pass so good. Up!
But here's where it gets absolutely insane. As spectacular as that first quarter explosion was, the real story of this game happened when Clark went back to the bench. In the second and third quarters, the coaching staff reverted to their traditional rotations. They sat their generational catalyst down, presumably to rest her. The results were nothing short of a tactical disaster. The offense immediately regressed back to that sluggish, uninspired mess we witnessed in the opening minutes. Without Clark's gravitational pull stretching the floor, the Italian defense compressed back into the paint. The passing lanes vanished. Those easy transition buckets disappeared, replaced by heavily contested isolation jumpers deep into the shot clock. It was painful to watch. The numbers from those middle quarters tell you everything you need to know about how lost this team looks without Clark. In the second and third quarters combined, Team USA only outscored Italy by 7 points total. 7 points. It was a dogfight for every single basket. This was exactly the type of vulnerable, grinding basketball that gets you upset on the international stage. The team looked completely mortal, desperately relying on individual heroics instead of any kind of cohesive offensive system. They were literally begging for someone to save them from their own stagnation. And then the fourth quarter arrived, and the coaching staff finally unleashed the lineup the entire basketball world had been screaming to see. They put Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, and Kelsey Plum on the floor at the same time. And if you ever doubted Clark's ability to break down elite international defenders in isolation, what happened next should put those doubts to rest permanently. She gets isolated on the perimeter against Italy's best defender, goes behind the back to completely freeze the defender's momentum, transitions seamlessly into a between-the-legs dribble to establish rhythm, stops on an absolute dime and elevates for a turnaround fadeaway jumper right in the defender's face. The mechanics are flawless, the footwork is pristine, the release is lightning fast. It's the kind of shot that destroys a defender's spirit because you can play perfect defense and it simply doesn't matter. She's a multi-dimensional scoring threat operating at the absolute peak of her powers. Now here's what really destroys all those toxic internet narratives about locker room drama and player jealousy. We've heard endless chatter about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark supposedly refusing to coexist. People have dissected clips frame by frame trying to prove some sabotage agenda. But the game tape from this fourth quarter completely shatters that narrative into a million pieces. Watch this play and tell me these players hate each other. Angel Reese, the exact player the internet claims can't stand playing with Clark, sets an absolutely crushing screen. She completely obliterates the perimeter defender, does all the dirty work, creates the space. And Clark exploits that space with terrifying precision. She uses her signature step-back move, fading to her left, creating an ocean of separation, and launches an absolute missile from logo range. The ball snaps through the net, and Angel Reese is visibly excited, celebrating the shot like it's her own. This is what championship basketball looks like when egos get put aside. Reese provides the physical enforcement, Clark provides the lethal long-range execution. When those two players are operating in perfect sync, running pick and rolls and dribble handoffs, there isn't a defensive scheme in the world that can stop them. But if the half-court synergy wasn't terrifying enough for international competition, the transition game we witnessed in the fourth quarter was an absolute masterclass in offensive velocity. When you secure a defensive rebound, you have approximately 2.5 seconds to catch a defense out of position. If you have a traditional point guard who wants to walk the ball up the floor, that window slams shut. But when you have a player whose default setting is a full sprint, the fast break becomes a weapon of mass destruction. Watch this sequence unfold and you'll understand why Clark changes everything in transition. Kiki Iriafen secures the defensive rebound through heavy traffic, but here's the key. She doesn't try to do too much. She immediately locates her point guard and executes the fundamental outlet pass. The second the ball touches Clark's hands, the Italian defense is completely compromised. Paige Bueckers, possessing incredibly high basketball IQ, recognizes the situation and immediately takes off on a dead sprint. What happens next is pure basketball magic. Clark is pushing the ball at breakneck pace, reading the retreating defense in real time. She sees Bueckers streaking toward the basket, but there are two Italian defenders perfectly positioned in the passing lane. For 99% of point guards on the planet, that passing window is closed. You pull the ball out and set up your offense, but Clark doesn't see closed windows. She threads an absolutely impossible needle, firing a pass with so much velocity and precision that it literally causes the retreating defender to stumble and almost fall over trying to intercept it. The ball lands perfectly in Bueckers' stride for an effortless finish. When you have Clark and Bueckers on the floor simultaneously, it's not just basketball, it's an offensive clinic. It's a level of spacing, shooting, and playmaking that makes the game look entirely effortless. The transition from that grinding, sluggish basketball of the middle quarters to the beautiful, flowing, high-octane offense of the first and fourth quarters was entirely dictated by one player's presence on the court. The box score from this game is the ultimate prosecutor in the case against Team USA's starting lineup decisions. The numbers are so overwhelmingly dominant they border on the absurd. Clark finished with 12 points, 5 assists, and an absolutely mind-bending 102% true shooting percentage. In the complex world of advanced basketball analytics, true shooting measures a player's efficiency by accounting for field goals, three-pointers, and free throws. To register a 102% true shooting metric means you're operating at a level of offensive perfection that's almost mathematically impossible to sustain. It means you're maximizing every single touch, every single shot, every single possession. But the most damning statistic for this coaching staff, the number that completely exposes the flaw in their rotational strategy, is the plus-minus rating. Caitlin Clark finished this game with a team-high plus 25. Let me put that number in context for you. In a basketball game where the middle quarters were highly competitive and grinding, the minutes when Clark was on the floor were an absolute bloodbath in Team USA's favor. When she played, Team USA was 25 points better than the Italian national team. 25 points. The team scored 28 points in the first quarter when she entered early, and 24 points in the fourth quarter when she closed it out. When she sat, they looked completely lost. The contrast was so stark, so undeniable, so glaringly obvious that it felt like watching two completely different teams wearing the same jerseys. We've officially reached a critical juncture in this Team USA experiment, and the time for political correctness has passed. The time for protecting veteran egos is over. You don't leave a player who generates a 102% true shooting percentage, a plus 25 impact rating, and completely transforms your sluggish offense into a high-octane machine sitting on the bench for opening tip. It's no longer just a strategic error, it's becoming legitimately ridiculous. Assistant coach Nate Tibbetts saw the truth 3 minutes into the game. He witnessed the offensive emergency, hit the panic button, and brought in the savior. But it shouldn't require an offensive emergency to play your best player. It shouldn't take a 5-point drought to realize your traditional lineup is completely obsolete. The international competition is only getting tougher. The physical demands are only increasing. And if Team USA wants to guarantee their dominance on the global stage, they need to stop playing games with rotations and hand the keys to the offense over to the player who literally saved them from an embarrassing start. So here's the bottom line. We just watched a masterclass in what happens when you unleash generational talent instead of burying it on the bench for political reasons. Clark didn't just play well, she completely transformed the identity of this team's offense. The numbers don't lie, the game tape doesn't lie, and the eye test certainly doesn't lie. This coaching staff has a decision to make, and honestly, it shouldn't even be a difficult one. Do they want to keep running an outdated system that produces 5 points in 3 minutes, or do they want to embrace the future and watch their offense explode for 23 points in 6 minutes? The choice seems pretty obvious to me. What do you think? Is it officially time for this coaching staff to swallow their pride and name Caitlin Clark the permanent starting point guard? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear where you stand on this. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening with Team USA, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications because this story is far from over. I'll see you in the next one. But let's talk about what happens next, because this coaching decision isn't happening in a vacuum. The international basketball community has been watching these Team USA exhibitions with laser focus. And trust me when I tell you they're taking notes on every single weakness they can exploit. When you look at the upcoming competition, we're talking about teams that have been preparing specifically to neutralize traditional American basketball for years. Australia has a defensive system built around pressuring ball handlers and forcing turnovers. Spain runs sophisticated zone defenses designed to slow down athletic teams. France has legitimate size and length that can disrupt passing lanes. These aren't the teams of 10 years ago that would simply roll over for American talent. Here's what makes this situation even more fascinating from a strategic standpoint. Every single one of those international powerhouses has studied the film from this Italy game by now. They've seen exactly what happened when Team USA tried to run their vanilla, predictable offense through traditional sets. 5 points in 3 minutes isn't just an embarrassing statistic. It's a blueprint for how to completely neutralize this roster when they're playing conservative basketball. But they've also seen what happens when Clark takes control, and that's where the chess match gets really interesting. International coaches are brilliant at making adjustments, but how do you adjust for a player who can legitimately score from anywhere on the court and create assists that shouldn't physically be possible? The ripple effects of Clark's performance against Italy extend far beyond just this one game. We're seeing a fundamental shift in how international teams are going to have to prepare their defensive game plans. Traditionally, when you're facing Team USA, you can pack the paint, force contested jumpers, and try to turn the game into a physical grind. That strategy worked beautifully for 3 minutes against the traditional lineup. But the second Clark entered the game, that entire defensive philosophy became completely obsolete. Suddenly, you're dealing with a player who can score from 35 feet with the same efficiency most players shoot from 15 feet. Your defensive rotations that worked perfectly against traditional point guards are now creating wide-open layups because Clark's passing vision operates on a completely different level. But here's where this story takes an even more compelling turn. The international basketball world has been dominated by a specific style of play for the past decade. Slower pace, methodical offensive sets, emphasis on ball movement and patience. It's beautiful basketball when executed properly, but it requires every player to buy into a system. What Clark brings to the table is something that transcends system basketball entirely. She's a chaos generator in the best possible way. When she has the ball in her hands, the defense can't rely on their rotations and help concepts because she's creating advantages faster than they can react to them. This isn't just about individual brilliance. It's about forcing the entire international basketball community to rethink their fundamental approach to defending American teams. The psychological impact of that fourth quarter performance cannot be understated. When you're an international player who spent months preparing for Team USA, you gameplan around specific tendencies and personnel groupings. You study film, you run drills, you prepare your mind for the intensity and athleticism you're going to face. But when a player comes off the bench and immediately starts making shots that look like video game basketball, it creates a completely different type of mental challenge. There's a reason why Clark's step-back three from logo range wasn't just a made basket. It was a momentum killer that completely deflated the Italian defense. They had fought and clawed to keep the game competitive, and one possession later they're staring at a deficit that feels insurmountable. Now let's address the elephant in the room that nobody in the basketball establishment wants to discuss honestly. The politics surrounding this roster construction have been absolutely toxic from day one. We've heard whispers about veteran players being uncomfortable with Clark's popularity. We've seen social media campaigns trying to diminish her impact on the college game. There have been coded comments from analysts about earning respect and paying dues that feel like barely disguised gatekeeping. But against Italy, all of that nonsense got completely obliterated by the reality of basketball performance. When your team is struggling and you bring someone off the bench who immediately transforms the entire complexion of the game, the politics become irrelevant. The most telling moment of this entire game wasn't even a basketball play. It happened during a timeout in the fourth quarter when the cameras caught Clark and the veteran players having an animated discussion about defensive rotations. You could see the mutual respect, the collaborative energy, the shared commitment to winning. This wasn't a rookie being tolerated by veterans. This was a player being embraced as a legitimate leader despite having the least international experience on the roster. Angel Reese was actively seeking out Clark for high fives after made shots. Paige Buchers was celebrating Clark's assists like they were her own baskets. The chemistry was undeniable, and it completely destroys the narrative that this roster has personality conflicts. What we witnessed in that fourth quarter was a preview of what American basketball could look like for the next decade if the decision-makers are brave enough to embrace it. Clark and Reese running pick and rolls is appointment television. When Clark finds Reese on the roll for an easy finish, it's basketball poetry. When Kelsey Plum spaces to the corner and Clark finds her with a cross-court laser for an open three, it's the kind of ball movement that makes international teams panic. This isn't just about individual talent. It's about a collection of players whose skill sets complement each other perfectly. They make each other better in ways that can't be captured by traditional statistics. The coaching staff now faces a decision that will define their legacy with this program. They can continue to prioritize experience and veteran leadership, hoping that the traditional approach will be sufficient against elite international competition. Or they can acknowledge what the game tape is screaming at them and build their rotations around the player who has single-handedly transformed their offense in every meaningful appearance. The conservative choice feels safe until you remember that international basketball has evolved dramatically. Teams are faster, more skilled, and more prepared than ever before. Playing it safe might actually be the riskiest strategy possible. Here's what I think happens next. and this is purely speculation based on what we've seen so far. The coaching staff is going to face enormous pressure from media and fans to start Clark, but they're also dealing with the complex dynamics of managing a roster full of established stars. My prediction is that we'll see a compromise approach where Clark gets significant minutes with the first unit, but they'll still try to maintain some semblance of the original hierarchy. The problem with that approach is that it's still not maximizing their most impactful player. Half measures don't win gold medals against teams that are playing with nothing to lose. The international basketball community is watching this unfold with fascination because they understand the implications better than most American fans. If Team USA figures out how to properly utilize Clark's talents alongside their veteran core, they become virtually unbeatable. But if they continue to treat her like a sixth man instead of a cornerstone player, it creates opportunities for upsets that simply shouldn't exist with this level of talent. The margin for error in international competition is razor-thin, and every strategic mistake gets amplified when you're facing teams that have been preparing specifically to exploit American weaknesses.